So I would like to request the second team, Cogniswitch, to come on stage.
Hi, I'm Vivek Khanilwal, and this is Joshua Thomas. We are co-founders at Cogniswitch. We got a chance to work along with Aditya Agarwal of Experian, who had outlined a very interesting problem statement, which about de-siloing lending data, uh, especially for the MSME context, and leveraging it to not only reduce AML, reduce fraud, but also do right sizing of loans for MSME. Right. Uh, the larger context is the government feels MSMEs have arrived. The government feels there's a massive push from the government, from banks. Everybody wants to sell them loans. They want loans. They want capital for growing. Right. Unfortunately, the reality is lending for them hasn't. Right. One big reason for that is data that MSMEs or bureaus or banks have about MSMEs is siloed. Data is broken. Think reports from Karza portal about GST, think bank statements, think annual reports, think promoter calls, and so on and so forth. Absolutely disparate data sets. The bigger problem is for the existence of credit bureaus in this country, which is about 2.5 decades, they've mostly made decisions on disparate siloed data sets, which means it does not matter whether you run a 1,000 crore company. If your CIBIL score is 700, you will get loan because you have a CIBIL score of 700, right? And vice versa. It doesn't matter which family you belong to or what's your personal worth, right? Because your company is young, growing, you will not get an OD or you will not get a credit limit, right? The intent here is to say, hey, the intent of the problem statement also was not just to focus on the non-performing asset applications, which is like the sub 10% applications, but also focus on how can we do right sizing uh, of the incoming applications, which are 90%, which are actually kosher, good, clean, right? So what we got was essentially a data set that which involved. Let me just pull up 1 second. Okay. Uh, what we got essentially as a data set, and this is a de-identified data set, of course, is a data set of a specific company, their bank statements, their annual reports, their director data, their MOA, their AOA, right? Along with that, we also got details of the individual directors, bank statements, CIBIL reports, and so on and so forth, right? And we tried putting together one single holistic view of that entity, right? Which is just not about the company, but also about the individual, right? And as Aditya described beautifully, Vivek tried to find out if there's a Vijay Mallya somewhere sitting in as a director in that list, right? Which is what most banks often miss out because they would only focus on the top two directors in a specific company and so on, right? This is exactly, by the way, what Cogniswitch does for a living. We structure unstructured data. That's our core expertise. We were able to build out a pristine relationship between entities, how the entities are related to its subsidiaries, its directors, what's their credit scoring, and most importantly, we're able to expose this through a simple API call to the credit bureau as and when required on demand. The credit bureau can then further package this as a product and give it to the bank or the NBFC and so on, right? More importantly, the bank now has a truly holistic view. Whether Joshua A is Joshua Money, then hey, I might want to extend him more than a 10 lakh rupee loan because his household ID is same as the Ambani household ID. His credit score right now seems to be 700, but he has the same address. He seems to be working in the same company. He's a director in the Ambani group and so on and so forth. Right? That's what is truly possible because you have this one holistic view, not just of the company, but also of their suppliers, also of their subsidiaries, also of the companies of which their directors are further directors in. Right? So you're able to truly get a full view. Right? Now, what we also did is we built out a very simple application on top of this. We said, okay, how do we make business sense out of this? To say, okay, here are the companies that I have. Right? I want to see impact of direct relationships. So my direct relationships is my directors, how good are they, how bad are they, and so on and so forth, which gives me a sense, okay, this company gets this credit score. When I go to one level down and start dealing into individual relationship between the directors and their credit scores, I get level 2. And when I go to their subsidiaries and suppliers and so on, I get a level 3. So I'm truly able to put together a comprehensive view of the org, their creditworthiness, and then appropriately right-size the loan. That's us. Thank you. Happy to take questions.
How do you come up with this score like 750? Can we know the reason behind it? Like, how do you reach to the 750? For example, this company has never defaulted in the past, right? The leadership quality is great, right? So, how do you derive those factors, right? And how do you drive their weights, right?
Great question. That is not what we will eventually do. We only provide the relation data to the bureau. The bureau essentially consumes it, structures it, passes on to the bank. It's the bank which is doing the underwriting. But for the underwriting, they now have the essential data sets, the essential data points, right, which they're able to now consume in real time and not wait for a batch update happening at the end of the month, right? This allows credit bureaus to finally ingest, consume, and at the same time pass on the intelligence of the 600 million all data points which they receive every single month, net new data points. Overall, they would receive somewhere in the range of 2 billion data points every single month about individuals and companies across the country, right? But they're now able to A, ingest, B, process, C, extract intelligence and insights, and bake it in as part of their existing product to the bank, allowing the bank to do better underwriting, right? That's the larger intent. The score, of course, was an extrapolation. That's not something which we are doing right now in this use case.
Okay. So in this demo, did you build any connector to pull the data from? Because as you see, like you need to pull the data from so many
No,
sources.
we did not.
This was like one thing that we had to do here was we had to synthesize data. The
Okay.
second thing was we had to create the application.
Okay.
The third part is the Cogniswitch element, which is actually analyzing the relationships. Because the nature of the problem is that there's a lot of data that's coming every day.
Okay.
And that connects to already existing data. And since it's so like disparate, you need to be able to meaningfully connect it with whatever identifiers make sense. Like Vivek mentioned, it could be Vivek K, it could be Vivek Khandelwal. We don't know if it's really the same person. But then you would have more and more evidences that the system then eventually can relate to that single person. So that's the idea. That's the problem.
In terms of a tech perspective, what kind of knowledge graph this is?
Sorry, please repeat the question.
What kind of knowledge graph this is? Is this Neo4j? What kind of tooling you are using here?
So this is an in-house system. It's not just a graph.
Okay.
We're also using vectors here. It's a neurosymbolic system. We call it a knowledge system. For people to understand, we call it a knowledge graph. It's also got this element of rules and engine that you can configure in it to determine like maybe finance related things need to be understood in a different perspective. Maybe like HR concepts need to be understood in a different perspective. So it's a combination of things that give you a different whole entirely. So that's what.
So within a database, you have created a relationship between these data points.
Sorry, can you?
Within a database, so you store all that data within a database, and then you drive the relationship.
So the storage and the pipeline to analyze is proprietary. That's the Cogniswitch element.
So one thing I found, I mean, putting maybe the CXO's hat on, I think one thing I found that could be done better is, I felt you stopped at one level, which is like drawing the connections. But if you're doing a credit score, as he said, there are two things that require, I mean, the relative quality and hence the question about weights.
Yeah.
But the other thing is also there are business rules, right? For example, related party transactions. And you have the capability to detect that.
Yeah.
So if you are like giving out underwriting, two things need to be done, right? One is like whether you can blacklist or, there is some anomaly, so popping that out. And the second thing is also something that you mentioned, which I wanted to ask is, when you're sizing, are you sizing up the loan amount which is at risk? Like, do you start, because they may have certain credit history or may not. So are you giving that data so that they can right size the loan? Maybe start with small, or maybe if the credit history is large, does that translate into maybe a larger chunk of money that they can be given hence because of the credit score, or maybe on the interest rate? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like you correctly said, right? The rules will be, changing from scenario to scenario, and it's going to be comprehensive. So it's going to have to be captured, which we didn't do in this case, which is like, going to be like different from various personas of, businesses and individuals, and like RBI saying they want to tap into social media. They want to take like even more data and look at individuals and analyze them in even more interesting ways. So that is something that you definitely can do, but because of limited time and everything, we haven't calculated anything. We've just related right now. So yeah.
Also, the underwriting remains in this case, in this specific use case. My customer was a bureau. The bureau does not underwrite themselves per se, right? They only facilitate, they enable the lending players to do their job better, right? And that's where the value add begins, right? Can I enable the bureau to push out more intelligent, relevant, contextual data to the lending system so that they can serve the MSMEs better and more extensively, right? The underwriting still remains with the banks, right, which is what they're expert at. Yeah.
And the bureau also serves the business and the individuals, like, because then they get, like Vivek mentioned, the 90% can be right sized then.
Yeah, and I think one thing you mentioned which was different is you're doing this in pretty much real time, right? That's what I heard.
Yeah.
The system has the capability to ingest data and connect it to the relevant nodes and so on and so forth. So yeah, of course. Thanks.
Thank
All
you.
good. All good. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek. and
Thank
team.
you.
Yeah, nice presentation.